What happens when you combine the most innovative, eccentric, and charismatic leaders, disruptors, and founders from tech, with the pedigree and history of one of the most established institutions within the City of London? The Searching for Mana podcast will be produced in partnership with the London Stock Exchange. I'm Lloyd Wahed, the host of Searching for Mana. We're going to be interviewing some of the leaders, influencers, and disruptors in the tech space, where I'm going to be trying to dig in and find out what's their mana, their superpower, their magic. Welcome on to Searching for Mana, Mo.
Thank you, Lloyd. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you so much for making the effort to come to London and come on to the show. Really excited to have this wide-ranging conversation with you. You'll do it more justice than me if you could introduce Aptos, Mo, and specifically give the audience a chance, if they don't already know, to understand, the metrics, the geographical reach, and the user case for the organization you founded, please. Sure.
And it's a pleasure to be here. London's a beautiful city, and so it's a little bit of a treat for me as a New Yorker, so thanks again. Aptos is a layer 1 blockchain, and it was designed inside the walls of Facebook with inspirations of changing the way money moves around the world freely. For me, that was a very important mission to be a part of, and so I was very excited to be part of that journey. We faced an interesting set of circumstances where we were unable to launch this infrastructure, but we knew it was absolutely needed in the market. I mean, you were looking at other protocols that had the same Web3 inspirations or aspirations, but the infrastructure just was not hardened. We operated with a very different set of first principles inside of Facebook where, if I need to send money to Lloyd and you're in London and let's say I'm in New York, or maybe you're sending money to me and I'm in Pakistan, that money needs to move faster than any money network out there today, whether that be Visa, MasterCard, PayPal, MoneyGram, all these remittance companies that exist. It not only needs to move fast, it needs to move cheaply, right? It should not cost as much as it does in any one of these networks today, given the advent of technology. And then of course, you need a network that's incredibly reliable, one that's going to evolve continuously. And so we were on this mission inside of Meta's walls, and at that time it was called Facebook. And today we're on a very similar mission. We don't have to only focus on money. We can now focus on any type of digital asset, and there's so many out there, right? Whether they be NFTs, whether they be things like meme coins, whether they represent central bank digital dollars. And all of these assets need to be able to work together with each other versus the world that we live in today, which is extremely fragmented and disjointed. And so we've been on that journey for quite some time inside of Facebook for 3.5 years. Aptos left and was independent 2.5 years ago. The network is live today. You can build whatever you want on it. That network is one of the fastest networks out there. And we don't compare ourselves just to other blockchains, but faster than protocols like Visa and MasterCard. And just to give a little perspective and scale, Visa supports today about 1,600 transactions per second. Aptos supports 30,000 transactions per second. That's fast. We can support all of Visa, and we can support many other things as well. And so in order for this vision to really come to life, you need credible infrastructure, and I'm excited to kind of get into that with you today.
Yeah, thanks, Mo. Well, firstly, congratulations. I know when you're a founder, sometimes it can feel like all you've got is challenges, but it's nice sometimes to stop and think, well, something pretty significant here has happened already. When you talk about the first solution you're providing, which is really financial rails for payments, huge market, obviously. 50 years ago, if somebody came and brought the solution to that, then they would very much stay focused on payments. Yeah. Whereas what's been in many ways wonderful, and in many ways I imagine a big issue for the Web3 space, where my daughter just learned how to do that, and it's hilarious. She does it like Chandler from Friends, completely wrong. So, yes, Daddy, I'd like to go to school.
Is that British humor?
Yeah. I'm not sure it's humor. You are now looking at the NFT marketplaces, gaming, the universe in your mind is just so wonderfully opportune and creative. However, I'd love you to let me know why you wouldn't just consider, I could be the guy who, innovates payments. We are quicker than Visa by orders of magnitude. This is a wonderful thing for the world, and not just retail, like the example of the individuals in India who can get remittance sent for nothing and instantaneously is big, but this is for organizations also.
Right.
Why have you decided to pursue the whole universe?
It's a really good question, and there's a long answer to this, so I'll try to do my best to kind of segment it. I guess principally, if I asked you, hey, should we create a new network for money? The first question you should ask is why. We have networks already that exist. And if, let's say we were able to convince you and say, yeah, well, you need a faster, cheaper network. Well, okay, fine. Why do we need a blockchain? Well, if you think about all the different assets that exist today, they exist in various different networks. Money doesn't sit in a silo. In fact, you use it to buy things. Now, where are you often purchasing things? Likely online, and of course you go into your storefronts for retail and whatnot as well. But if you just look at the digital assets or the online purchases, the internet today is not designed to support payments. It's weird because all we do is seem to be purchasing things on the internet. Now, when that happens is you have all these different rails in the background that help make payments look like they're seamlessly happening on the internet. But in reality, TCP/IP needs to speak with MasterCard network, Visa network, ACH, SWIFT, so on and so forth. These are two networks or multiple networks that need to be able to work together to ultimately complete a transaction. What is the cost of that transaction? Well, there's latency, so it takes time for that transaction to settle. You may not feel it as a user, but on the back end for all these payments companies, it takes T+2, sometimes T+3, or even T+5 days to settle that transaction. And that kind of sucks if you're a small merchant because you're selling something and shipping it out, but there might be default risk on the back end and you may not get paid. Well, that's not great. And so even today, when you get to look at the internet, Web 1, forget about Web 2, the mission has largely been unfulfilled. And so you need a network that is completely new, that supports digitally native payments, not in a silo. You need it to be able to work and support things together. And even today, if you look at, you're probably familiar with Error 404, right? It gets everyone frustrated, of course. There's also Error 402. Not that many people are familiar with Error 402. But Error 402 is basically payment not available. So the original version of the internet, this was carved in, is if I wanted to read content, if I wanted to make something pay for consumption, you couldn't do that, and you still can't do that today. You have to plug all these things together. And so starting with something like payments is really, really important, but it should not happen in a silo. When we purchase digital assets within a game, your daughter might be playing Fortnite and buying a bunch of skins, or you might be buying a subscription to go consume Netflix or music content. Yep. These are all digital assets. These digital assets sit within a different set of universe. And those assets have to be interoperable with TCP/IP and then also now with payments. And all of this is extremely fragmented and disjointed. And guess who pays for it? The consumer, the value creators. And so we envision Aptos being a network where you don't have to have these disjointed assets, these digital assets that sit in network A, money sits in network B, something else sits in network C, and we'll piece it together with some Band-Aid and bubble gum. We envision a more seamless network. So going back to the original question, if you had to create something today where you can connect all of these different types of assets together, you ideally want one network that can support all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, I'm convinced because it's just so fun to paint on the whole canvas, right? So I'll accept your proposal and let's look at it like that. We were talking to Robbie, who's the CEO of Mocha. If you know them, and started as a gaming company, and then now have made a vast amount of investments just across the whole plethora of different industry sectors, and it's working wonderfully. Where Robbie gives examples of in gaming now you can have bought an NFT, and a lot of people identify as that being their PPF, their identity online, and then you can bring this into the game and it can actually work bridged across different games as well. And it's like, okay, so I understand that's super useful for you to be able to own in this era. It'd be great if you could give us an example, something that you're excited about that's within the Aptos ecosystem at the moment, where what you've just spoken about is happening, hence the payment solution you've brought is allowing these things to come together.
Yeah, it is interesting to see how Animoca thinks about things and how they've evolved their business. Animoca is an investor in Aptos, and having spent time with Yat and their team, it's been fun kind of thinking how the intersection of these different types of assets and different categories and verticals really do converge. And so, for us, if we can support payments in a much more fluid way, you can enable things like micropayments. Like, going back to that 402 error that I was talking about. So imagine you're in a game and you want to buy digital assets, right? In an Animoca branded game potentially. Well, every time you have to click on a transaction, right? And accept that transaction and pay for it. Instead, you can now have streaming payments. You can actually have money that is obviously digitized, maybe a stable coin, maybe a central bank digital issued currency, or a stable coin issued by a financial institution. If that money is on the Aptos network, it can benefit from much faster, more frequent movement and instant settlement. We support sub-second latency today. So when you are sending money across a gaming environment, that transaction needs to be able to settle within the game experience, right? You don't want to wait for that transaction to render, and by that time that's game over, right? And so we can actually support that today. So imagine you're walking around in a metaverse, you need to pick up a sword, now you need to pick up some armor. You can very quickly purchase these things along the way, in game time essentially.
Why did Facebook, now Meta, let this come out? I mean, this just sounds like everything that they would want, right? Well, we need to get the lawyers in to answer this one.
It is a good one to kind of think about it. I mean, for us, we realized that this vision needs to come to fruition. Yep. And Facebook was very gracious in understanding that everything that we had built served the mission greater than all of us. And they're an investor. Facebook is not an investor in Aptos, but we have a lot of folks that come from Meta. We have a great relationship with our Facebook and Meta family, and so we do stay in touch with them and often have conversations around what the next generation of the world could potentially look like.
With Mark?
With the team there, not with Mark necessarily. Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
All right then.
Yeah. I mean, my co-founder Avery and our CTO, he was at Facebook for 10.5 years. He helped scale the infrastructure for Facebook so that you can actually move data in a way that you can interact socially with people. And if you think about money or digital assets, they're now more advanced forms of interaction, right? You're actually sharing things. You're sharing assets. Photos are just one of those things. Yep. Money might be something else. Yep. Commerce might be something else. And in the world of collaboration, cross-country, borderless collaboration, you need to be able to share these digital assets, right? Like your daughter might be creating a really cool beat, and my daughter might want to collaborate with her on a dance, right? And so and they're across the world, and so creators need to be able to share these types of digital assets essentially in a way that allows them to continue to create, continue to iterate on their craft.
Yeah, I love it. Just to finish with the kind of update around like where you guys are right now, more on a metric side. If you could just go through, like some of the numbers are pretty big, right? Market cap, how much user case is there? If there's a project which you think demonstrates that best, like I'd love you to talk around.
Yep.
How many people are working in this? How many part of the community?
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, Aptos Labs has 150 people working on solving some of the most difficult problems out there to scale this network. So whether that be things like consensus mechanisms and continuing to research the next generation of consensus mechanisms, we have amazing people on our team, folks like Sasha and Rati at the cutting edge of that. And their research ends up getting submitted and accepted into some leading sort of venues across the world. So that research is not only great for blockchain, but it's great for research for consensus mechanisms globally. Now, you can take that research and put it into implementation. We can do that faster than anyone else. And so I believe we have over close to 25 PhDs on our team working on all these complex problems. So again, whether that be things like consensus, to cryptography, to storage, to distributed systems. And so needing to build the best blockchain in the world, or a slightly more advanced, more free, more open internet, you need some of the world's smartest people.
Are the PhDs scattered across different universities, or have you got a strong relationship with a particular?
No, they're all on our team. They work at Aptos Labs, and they
finished the PhDs?
They finished their PhDs.
So it's not R&D phase?
That's right. That's right. We go from R&D to production faster than anyone out there. In fact, our head of cryptography comes from MIT. And one of our lead researchers for consensus mechanisms comes from Israel. And so they all live in the Bay Area. We hang out in Palo Alto. We are, under one roof and really pushing the boundaries of not only what can be conceptualized, but turning those concepts into production and bringing them to life. Yeah. And that is not just a research lab. That's, a company that I think can really push innovation forward. So that's on the lab side. We also have an amazing group of BD folks, marketing and strategy people, but we also pay very close to the ecosystem. If you think about all the cool companies that have become, $100 billion, $1 trillion companies today, they didn't start off inside of an existing company. Look at all the companies that have innovated and pushed the boundaries of what's possible. They all start off as entrepreneurs. And there's a reason why we continue to work with the disruptors of tomorrow. And so, we have an incredibly robust community of builders that we cultivate, we work closely with, help them implement their ideas and their vision of what the future of finance could look like, no different than what the future of gaming or media and entertainment or even social networks can look like. Yep. And we help them build those products together. And so we might spend time with them on fine-tuning their idea, all the way to helping them actually implement those ideas and bring them to life. Last week, we were actually in Hong Kong displaying a lot of this work. And so going into numbers, we had 35 different teams fly into Hong Kong to talk about the future of decentralized finance. Or, what I kind of think about is an extension of future open financial systems. And so these 35 teams demonstrated how DeFi protocols are really taking over and challenging the way financial systems and financial markets have existed. So on one hand, you have the BlackRocks and the Morgan Stanleys and the Franklin Templetons of the world. We're in London, so we have a bunch of UK banks as well. But we don't know how fast they'll innovate. You and I know that it's probably going to be much slower than the next generation of entrepreneurs. And if you look at companies like Revolut, Cash App, Venmo, they've innovated much faster than any of these financial institutions ever could have. And so cultivating these founders is really, really important for us as an ecosystem.
I think the space is talking for the last, forever, but a couple of years around needing to have more user cases actually become significant. And so if you look at the example of like those 35 companies, and then just look at across the whole space, you seem to have this missing part in what would typically have been the venture cycle, let's say, where you'd get a couple of founders who'd get grants and therefore they have some runway. And typically that seems to have been on like the technical and infrastructure side based on the time frame that we're in bringing this out to market. And then there's a few companies who've broken through who aren't protocols, like let's say a Ledger, which is offering a significant user case globally. But the middle hasn't, in my opinion, been as strong as it needs to be. And I think hopefully many things in this cycle are going to happen, like institutional grade companies coming to it on the financial side, for instance. Like if we call it Series A through to growth phase, that's where I think we need the talent to come from the BlackRocks, the Goldman Sachs, the MIT PhD, and join these companies, which is what makes them that organization of, say, 50, 150 people, really break it out into something significant. We haven't seen enough of that. I believe we're going to see it this cycle if people like you are able to stimulate it, support it, and back it. What's your view there? Whether you agree or not, firstly, but then also, if you do, is that coming through now? Are you seeing that happen? And is there anything that you think we need to do further for it to?
Wow, that's a really interesting topic to go down on, because you're essentially almost challenging the way entrepreneurs come to market. And I read an interesting book by Ivan Lillich called Deschooling Society that is a response to this question. Entrepreneurs are incredibly brave. They're willing to risk it all, essentially, because they believe in something that can be disruptive. Now, some of those entrepreneurs might come from a large institution. They may have worked at Facebook, Google, BlackRock, or maybe other companies. And they've seen something. They've seen something that does not work, and it doesn't sit well with them. They want to break through the paradigm, the shift that's essentially needed. And a few of them have seen what that bravery can lead to. And there's many great entrepreneurs that have built amazing companies in our time. And you don't necessarily need to follow the same structure that you may have had to over the last 3 decades, let's call it, to be an entrepreneur. Do you need to go to school? And all the information you need is available to you today. In fact, going back to the age of craftsmanship, I mean, you need mentors. You need founders that can actually work and support other founders, or you need a network of investors that can help facilitate that. We have not seen that, you're absolutely right, in the last sort of cycles of Web3. It's been a little bit of the same crowd. And that has led to, well, if we're just hanging out with the same people, like, how are we really pushing the boundaries and growing collectively? And so having closer proximity, not only to us, but to some of our investors like A16Z or Dragonfly, we can build that robust ecosystem up and help grow these founders and these developers, these entrepreneurs as well. And that's something that we're really proud to do. I mean, I'm here in London, of course, to hang out with you, but I spent a day at the A16Z office, who is very excited about the innovation happening here in the UK, in London specifically. They've opened up an office here. They have 25 projects that they're incubating right here in London. And so these are projects that flew in from all over the world that are going to be spending 3 months here. And what A16Z is doing is basically giving them all the different tools that they need, whether that be technical orientation, marketing, business development, and bringing folks like myself in to help show them what to do and how to get to where maybe I am today, or maybe even farther than where I am at one day. And to us, that will lead to more Series A funding, Series B funding, and growth funding.
Thank God the Americans are here, finally. we might make some breakthrough companies. Just to finish on this point, and we'll put that book in the show notes. So thank you for the recommendation. You've blown one of my mile around questions already. But nonetheless, this last cycle, that we're in 2024, April-ish, I think. Yeah. It was tricky, right?
Yeah.
And you can look at it as a perennial optimist as a founder and think, well, there's silver linings because maybe it got rid of some of the bad companies or bad actors and we had to level up and all this stuff. But let's not beat around the bush. It was tricky. I mean, I don't know. I'm making assumptions, but I assume for you it's been one heck of a ride, not just for your own organization, but also this attachment and appreciation you have for everybody in the ecosystem. And going to bed at night, there could be a lot of weight here if you aren't great at meditating and having silver lining mentality. You'd please talk to that if you'd like to, but actually the question is, what are you doing to prepare for the next time round? I'm sure you now have to consider treasury management potentially in certain ways, like should we operate like a fund in certain ways? The type of projects we're setting up now, what happened last time, where then those projects potentially died, and why wouldn't they now?
Yeah. Well, that's also an interesting one to talk about. I mean, it is always good to have the previous cycle be something that we all learn from, and we certainly have. Everything from developers and builders and entrepreneurs, investors in this space, and then even large companies, right? We're at a point where BlackRock has an ETF in the market. Who would have thought that would have happened?
I know.
Right? And so, and yes, my alma mater. And so, they've had nearly $20 billion of inflows.
Yeah.
That ETF, a crypto ETF, is one of their most successful products over the last half a decade. That's pretty damn good if you ask me, right? And so we definitely have learned, and in a way that people understand the business need and the market demand for this. Now, how do we tie it all together and make it responsibly, at scale, is really, really important. We should not make the same mistakes of the past. And so for Aptos Labs, we want to build infrastructure that is incredibly serious. You can't afford to have congestion in a network or call your network a beta network. I should use your daughter's quotes here. It's really important to work with these ecosystem projects that take their livelihood incredibly serious. And if we can't provide a network for them, we're not taking them seriously.
Yeah, I love it.
Right? And so, imagine a telco came out today and said, hey guys, we're a beta telco. You wouldn't have too many subscribers. Imagine GCP said, hey guys, we're upgrading our network today. Don't use any cloud services. Your email and YouTube will be down for a few days, an hour, a few hours, or, oh, by the way, we don't know when it happened, it just happened. Too many people are watching YouTube at the same time. Right? And so, in order for us to be successful as a space, as an industry, not only do we have to actually pay attention to the lessons of the past, but we have to implement them into production. We did 50 AIPs last year as a network, the most of any network. We did 5 major upgrades to the protocol last year, more than any network. We had no downtime during those network upgrades. Right, and so if you think about that, we're operating at cloud level SLAs.
Do you think there just needs to be Aptos then? You're the Linux is an example people tend to give at the moment. Again, I don't know if you agree. You have protocols at the moment who are certainly looking to be very collaborative with other protocols, and then you have some who believe that they're going to be, as mentioned, the Linux, and therefore you only need one. You're on the latter there, are you?
It's difficult to see where or predict where the world will go.
Yeah.
But I think
let's do it.
Well, let's look at history then, right? Like if you look at Yahoo, for example, it would have looked like, when Yahoo came out 5 years later, they pretty much owned the market. It's the only search engine that anybody really used at scale. And, they also started to provide mail services and all and whatnot. And so you would have been scratching your head thinking, it's game over. Yahoo owns search.
And Yahoo also thought that you would go and look on the web page and it would be like a supermarket of everything. Yep. And then of course, Google comes along and becomes search.
You're beating my story here. You gotta let me talk. Google comes late to the party, really late to the party, and says, hey, we want to try search too. We don't like this messy, clunky marketplace. Here's one simple bar. But what we will do is make sure that your search is completed in under 1 second, because we have some really damn good tech.
Oh, how long did Yahoo take? I don't remember this.
When you go to google.com right now and you search for something, in light gray shade, it still says search completed under this time. And the search results are robust. And so they're just letting you know, we have the best damn tech, and that's why you love us. And so at a point where you thought Yahoo would have owned the entire search market, now you have Google come in, not only take their market share, but they grew the entire market. Billions of people now use Google, and they have multiple products that have multiple billions of users. And so it's really, I think, too early to say that there's one clear winner in this space. I think we are all very aggressively pushing things forward, but Aptos really certainly stands out heads and shoulders above the rest, despite us coming in late, very similar to Google.
Yeah, I love how you're looking at that. So do you do that? Like, do you take that principle from Google, what was put so high, and like you said, they still so proud, it seems like, that they want to tell you how quickly the search happened. Do you do that as well?
We do. After the show, I'll send you some APT just to show you how fast the network works. But there are people that I was hanging out with in Hong Kong last week, where we were sending APT back and forth, and they almost fell out of their seats.
Yeah. So they were probably using Solana, right? big issues on the network right now. Yep. Congestion, but nonetheless, massive opportunity if Anatoly, who's come on the show, can resolve some of those issues, which technically there's debates around whether you can or can't. Whether you want to comment on that?
I think, this is a little bit of an answer to your previous question as well. I mean, we have, I come from the world of Ethereum, and what Vitalik and that foundation has been able to do, and the builders in that ecosystem have been able to do, is just amazing, unbelievable. To take things like, iterate and evolve on Bitcoin and make programmable money available, and we want to extend that vision with a different generation of technology. And that doesn't mean that you can only have one version of the internet or one protocol that works by itself. We want to be completely compatible and interoperable. And so when we launched Aptos, we had layer 0 bridges, layer 0 and Wormhole live on day one. So if you had assets in the Ethereum network, you can bring them over. We love that. If you have assets on other protocols, you can bring them over too. Now, the utility of those assets is to be defined by the products and applications and the builders of those applications. Now, if other networks are operating with downtime or congestion, then if you're trying to bring your assets over from, let's say, Solana to Aptos, you're going to get stuck in a traffic jam, a single lane highway, operating sequentially. When we were building this inside of Facebook, there's no way we thought that was the way the world exists, nor will it continue to exist. We built multi-lane superhighways that don't get congested. And so...
Put some of those in the real world as well, please.
Yeah.
In America.
American highways, that's a Robert Moses discussion, another book, Power Broker, if you haven't read that one. But if you think about, imagine we had all these superhighways and there's traffic and you're looking to come onto that highway, and I say, oh, sorry, Lloyd, there's a traffic jam. You want to come join this traffic jam? Pay me more money. Your toll has just gone up.
Yeah.
So you're paying more to drive on a congested network? That doesn't compute.
Yeah. How will you make your revenue then?
It's a good point. I mean, we view Aptos, the network itself, as a public good. It's a network that anyone should be able to use, right? And if you look at other public goods that are out there today, I mean, the internet might be one of them. Water is certainly another one. I mean, imagine everyone's turning on their water fountain and to wash their hands or drink some delicious water here, and all of a sudden...
Thames Water are just about to go out of business in the UK, so don't rely on that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that is an interesting one to think about. But imagine, as you turn your tap on, because everyone's using it, then the water stops running.
Yeah.
Right. You have to have these, and water is a necessity. And so these really important pieces that are critical to our human society need to be near free in terms of cost.
Yep.
And so that's how we think about it from a network gas fee perspective. In fact, a transaction from you to me would cost 0.0000006 APT.
Okay.
It's free.
I'm happy with that.
Yeah. And it's faster than any other network out there in market today. And so you can build some really cool stuff in a society that respects that digital asset movement should be free. Now, from a business model perspective, you might need to use tools. You might need to use additional products. And so this is where Aptos builds specific tooling out for gaming, payments, social, and other different industry verticals. And you can use some of that tooling. You can use other ecosystem tooling as well. And so whatever you end up deciding to use, that might lead to a business model for Aptos Labs.
Yeah, I love it. Well, look, I want to move to the next part of the show. I could carry on for so long, but you've got a busy schedule in London, and I don't want to run over. But yeah, again, just to pause, like, what an exciting platform you've created. It's unbelievable. We need 7 hours to go into it all. Want to now really find out a little bit more about you, and go back, if you could be so kind, really as far as possible, to a story that maybe would set the scene for like who Mo was when he was growing up, and related, if at all possible, to maybe something that might show us in the audience how you were starting to think about who you might be, or who you might be in the business world, entrepreneurialism, etc.
Yeah, happy to share that story. My parents are originally from Karachi, Pakistan, and we grew up lived in an area called Lines, and it was called Lines because people would throw electric wires on the cable to get electricity. Water was not available. You had to walk to a water hole. And so, we were, after my parents married, they realized, well, we want to have a good opportunity for education for our children. They moved to Abu Dhabi. And that's where I was born and my sister was born. But they also realized that Abu Dhabi may not have the school system that they had imagined. During the first Bush administration, so late 1980s, there was a massive push by Republicans and George Bush Sr. to open up immigration in the US. Both of my parents applied, and my mom, having had her master's degree, won the green card lottery. They sold their wedding jewelry and bought some tickets to move to the US. And they moved to an area called Brighton Beach. It's at the utmost southern tip of Brooklyn. It's not so much of a beach, but it was a beautiful place growing up. And a majority of the people around me came from the former Soviet Union or were majority Russian Jewish. And so as a Mohammed Sheikh, Pakistani immigrant growing up in that environment, it was fun to try to navigate playing roller hockey or just doing some stuff that I typically would not have had exposure to, maybe even playing chess. And so it was a very rich childhood. My parents ended up having 3 additional siblings, and so it was 7 of us together. And we grew up pretty poor. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. My father worked 2 jobs. He was at a bedding factory sewing tailor in the mornings, and in the evenings he drove a taxi cab to try to make ends meet. And we were on, I think, 2 forms of welfare, so grew up, again, very, very poor. And so I would always ask my dad, like, why can't we get more money? And what's this taxi business thing that you do at night where, I don't really get to see you? And, he explained to me that he drives a taxi, it's not his car. He has to pay, the taxi medallion owner a portion of his fare, a pretty significant portion. Yeah. You make $10, you come home with 5. And so that just left me scratching my head thinking like, well, what does this middle person do? Why don't we get more of that money? Because my dad is the one that's working hard. You and I, put in the work, but we may not necessarily get the fruit of our labor. And so that kind of just stuck with me my entire life, actually. Who are all these middle parties, multiple middle parties at times, and what value are they really contributing?
Yeah.
And when I think
if we saw what a fantastic story, and huge kudos to your parents. If we saw you, in, I don't know where it is, you're 11 or you're 15 here, did that notion annoy you, and did that make you very determined and you were working hard or rebellious? It can go 2 ways, right? Like, what was happening in that phase?
I think a little bit of both. When you start to ask these questions, often, and I was very, very lucky to grow up in America. My parents, being Pakistani, put your head down and work. Don't ask questions. And meanwhile, I'm in class where, my Russian colleagues are challenging the math teacher. And I'm like, wow, that's brave. And I want to be just as brave as them, because I have similar questions. Why do I need to internalize them?
My partner's, she grew up in, her parents were Vietnamese, and she grew up in Warsaw, and I think it's a similar type of mentality.
Yeah. I mean, it does start off with a sense of curiosity. And if that curiosity is insatiated with a response, then you might ask why again, and again, and again. And if you're not satisfied, you might leave that conversation or that situation frustrated, because you're trying to get to the truth. And if you're not satisfied, and that means there might be a better option, there might be a better solution, or you just don't understand the system. And I think in these situations, going back to where humanity is today, across borders, across the world, if we ask ourselves why and don't get satisfaction, then we should be thinking about new systems that can be far more valuable, more efficient. And so it did create a sense of frustration for sure. Why does this middle party exist? Can it be done better? Is there more efficient, means to an end? And if you go down that rabbit hole, you might come up with ideas and solutions.
But if I take this visualization I have, which is researching you on Google, where the response came back very quickly, and seeing a very dapper, short-haired Mo earlier on in his career, and then, by the way, absolutely love what you're wearing today.
Thank you. Appreciate
Very
it.
cool. looks like you conformed for a bit. Looks like you must have thought to yourself, okay, let's play the game in the rules and be successful. But perhaps, I don't know, I'm making an assumption, I'd love to know this part. Is that what you did, and was that strategic? Do you think like, I need to get myself to a position where I'm curious, I understand this more, I play the game, perhaps I make enough income that then I have optionality? Was that strategic? Is that what you did?
That's a really, I feel like I should lay down on this couch to answer that one. I wasn't ready for that. I'll answer this in two ways. I really loved basketball, and man, I was short and I sucked, but I really loved basketball. And so, when I would go to play, no one picked me. And I was watching these kids because I would get there earlier and shoot around by myself. And I was like, I'm all right compared to everyone else on the court. Why doesn't someone pick me? And so, while people were running up and down the court playing, I would just sit there and root for them and cheer for them, or, sometimes talk a little shit on the side. I'm from New York, so it's basketball is the beauty of trash talk too, right? And eventually people noticed me and I got picked up. And when you get your shot, you better shoot it. And if you miss, better get the ball again and shoot it again. And so you gotta play the game. You can't just sit on the sidelines and watch, and hope and pray. You have to make your space. And so I learned that through the streets of, New York City's basketball. And then that just certainly carried forward, right? No one is gonna come looking for you and say, Lloyd, I have this amazing opportunity for you. You have to seek it, and you have to take it, and you have to know when it's available. And so I was lucky to kind of really understand. I studied psychology and economics in undergrad, and I thought, okay, well, finance is kind of the chosen land, right?
Yeah.
And so I went on to work at places like RBC and BlackRock, and really loved my time there, and play the game, right? But inside, I was still the same kind of rambunctious Mo that I probably am today. And now when I look at my daughter, who's 14 months, how old's your daughter?
5.5.
5.5. I mean, their curiosity it's off the charts.
It's unbelievable, isn't it?
Yeah. And for somewhere along the way, our societies kind of conform us to, don't be so curious. Don't ask so many questions. Why not?
Yeah, I have to be so careful. So my daughter's called Lily. And you try to not have the parent bias where you're like, but my kid's amazing, they're the greatest kid on the planet. But some of the feedback, good and bad, I think on the good side is she's so curious. She just asks so many questions. Oh gosh, she gets this from me. And so I'm like, don't be annoying, Lily, and always just ask why 20 times. But then you think, maybe don't do that, right? Like, this is brilliant. I don't know how you're finding, I'm trying to think back to 1.5. Already the curiosity is obviously there.
Yeah, it's definitely there. And, we should never let that die as individuals, as society, because once we stop asking why, then, we've started to probably accept status quo.
Status quo, yeah. Need a reset.
Yeah. But going back to your point, I think in that position where Lily is asking why, or we are asking why, it doesn't often get asked enough, and so when you do ask, people are often felt with, well, why are you asking why?
Yep.
Well, I'm asking because I'm curious, and so I think, especially in today's society where tensions might seem high across the globe, and even person to person, COVID's probably had some role to play in that too. I think you have to always operate with positive intention, and be able to look someone in the face and say, hey, I'm curious because I think we have an opportunity to make this better.
Yeah.
And so in these moments of contention, which may be felt as hostile at times, I think it is really important to act with a genuine sense or mana of how do you move the ball forward.
Yeah. Well, it's just I completely agree. It's such a pleasure to have carried this interview series for now what's nearly 5 years, and getting to talk to individuals like you. And I ask these questions, which I think sometimes, like, this dude thinks he's an amateur psychologist, and I absolutely do.
You or me?
But both of us probably. No, definitely me. Sounds like you're qualified. Where I'm trying to understand if there's these certain traits that allow somebody to create what you've created. There just seems to be so many trends across the guests where they are really successful, where they've had this type of a background. I don't know if maybe it's built resilience, maybe it's slightly forced them into the question of asking why. Because to ask why, when you've inherited a wonderful setup on the stage, is a trickier thing maybe to do, right? I'm not saying that people with privilege aren't incredibly successful. They are, obviously. But it does feel like if you really find the people who just come out the blocks and disrupt, and they tend to have this pattern, but it's better, apart from in very few circumstances, where you do join the game for a while, because otherwise you're playing with very little data. You don't really understand what you're trying to change. So that's like, true, I just want to go disrupt everything immediately. And what's the chance you're going to do that? Well, if you're technical, perhaps this can happen, right, in an infrastructure play. But if it's something to do with the actual real world, and if you want to have garnered empathy, which is required, then this type of a path is absolutely classic. So great again to see that. Good for our guys at A16Z. I'll send them some notes.
Okay. I think you said the magic word there, empathy, right? And I think if we all embody that a little bit more, despite the way we look, despite the way where we come from and our histories, I think that empathy can go a very long way. And so even if you meet a founder, someone else might be in the seat for the next show. If you ask them, why are you disrupting? It's interesting to hear people's answers, right? Yeah. And so some might say, because I'm really passionate about this particular problem. Others might say, well, I'm here to just make money. And I guess there's nothing really wrong with any of those answers. For me, I think it goes back to just my personal philosophy of life is quite short. If we're lucky, maybe we'll hit like 100-year lifespan. And things will change definitely within all those decades that we'll be fortunate to experience the world. But what would you have done in that window? Right? Yeah. And so the way I kind of approach things is, the reason I like to disrupt is to make things better. I'm not disrupting for the sake of ruffling people's feathers or trying to get rich. I mean, ultimately, we come to this world with nothing, and we will leave pretty much with nothing, right? And so, looking at things from that lens for me has been incredibly grounding, so that when you do negotiate with a counterparty, or you're working with a bunch of people that may not necessarily understand what you're trying to achieve, being able to articulate things can be done better, more efficiently, and we all win together as a result. Yeah. And if you can articulate that, I think you'll find the path of entrepreneurship a little bit easier than just going out there and disrupting for the sake of maybe just disrupting.
I'm not convinced that I want to get to 100, even if I could, by the way, but I find it quite relaxing when you can be looking at things on your desk that it flips from challenging to exciting. I tend to find with founders where you don't want to miss the opportunity, and you're thinking in months or years, to really think of like 10 decades, right? And then like, I don't think, oh God, I'm so old. Like, how much longer do I have to like pull all this stuff off? And you're like, I'm 40. Well, I'm 40. Okay, right. Like, there's a good 40 years because I'm going to definitely work. Okay, now I break those down. It's like, I need to just do one big thing that I make something better each 5 years, and I've got this many tickets. It's kind of just quite a relaxing approach. I'll come back to at the end your future projections, but now I want to go into the Mana round.
Oh, okay.
Just quickly. So feel free to answer as short form or long term as you'd like, long form as you'd like. And just to set the scene, Mana, which I think you know, is really an expression which can define your magic, your superpower. So in gaming, you have your power, your life, and then you have the Mana, which is maybe you've got amazing sword skills, or you can like shoot basketball hoops from like the halfway line. Is that what you call it? Basketball hoop?
Yeah. 3-point line.
Okay, all right. So we'll get to what your Mana is, but just a few questions I always ask all the guests. So you've got the front cover of whatever your favorite publication is, and let us know what that is.
Sure.
And you get to put a message on it. What's the message, Mo?
I mean, it is an interesting one to think about. In terms of favorite publications, I actually don't think about necessarily the front cover either. One of my interview questions that I ask, so this is a little bit of a tip for anyone who's interviewing with me, is, do they read The Economist? I really like The Economist because I think it covers so many different perspectives in the form of, social behavior, and you're able to quantify what's going on in the world. And
the Bartleby section's my favorite. I love it.
that's a great section. But my favorite section is actually the last page, the obituary page.
Okay.
Not to get morbid on the show, but I mean, this is a couch. And you did say you're a psychologist, part-time. So, if I think about that, what would, the last page say about me? Which is the same question I ask about others.
Yeah.
What kind of life did I live, and what kind of a life did I lead? And so
that's an even better question. Okay, I'll steal that from you.
It's all yours. And so it's usually faceless. So, if I was on, someone was to write about, the life that I had left or lived, it would be definitely one that changed the world for the positive direction and momentum, but was brave enough to do it. Because, often it's not easy to, wake up in the faces of no's. And as an entrepreneur, your job is to hear nothing but no's and somehow convince them to yeses. But you can only do that with, I think, the most important motto, which is always leading with the truth.
And maybe AI merging with the blockchain will allow that, right?
That would be nice. We're working on some of that stuff with folks like Microsoft, as you probably know. But having the truth, as sometimes it might feel painful, but once you get past a little bit of that friction in the beginning of the truth, you'll find on the other side is a fresh breath of air. And if you can lean into that truth, I think you can really get to some fun outcomes. And so, I think leading with truth is something that I would love for that last page to say. The other part is you have to be incredibly creative. And I think creativity is all around us. You just have to be able to find it, right? Whether it's even in the tanning and the fractures of this couch, right? And so, paying attention to what's around us is really, really important instead of just only focusing on it and yourself or your immediate circle. And the more you can do that, I think the more we can get back to creating some amazing products and tools and things that we like and love, right? And in, I think, the next 2 decades or so, with tools like AI that become your thought partner, your agent to transact, our minds should free up that space to be able to be much more creative. And so I'm excited about that too.
Yeah, thank you for your thoughtful response. I've not had anybody flip it like that, so I love it. But I'm going to push you. You've got the cover, and so you have to come up with a few words here. What's that going to say? Like Mo seeking the truth, or what is it?
That is, I thought about this for quite some time, and I couldn't really nail it down. So it's hard. I don't know how writers do it.
Maybe it's a picture of you just shooting a hoop then.
Yeah. I guess I could probably see myself holding a basketball if it was the cover, or at least maybe sitting down on one. Power and change with empathy, I think, would be sort of nice components.
So you're coming into the day and you need to be as sharp and balanced and thoughtful of everything. There's a lot of weight on the shoulders. What's the ritual or the morning routine that sets you up? And I mean, you've got a daughter now, so I'm not sure if you're just completely out the window. But is there something you do to set yourself into the day?
Yeah, it's. I think having some kind of routine at the beginning or the end of the day is helpful. I often wake up, grab my phone, and answer emails like this horizontally for a little bit.
Oh, I like that.
I'm sure a lot of us are doing it, so just gonna be very transparent there. And so we're none of us are superheroes here, right? But I do think having a sense of, okay, well, I want to get some key things out of the way, and so I try to get a 15 to 20 minute very intense workout in. It helps me release a lot of my energy. I like going into the office. I'm in Palo Alto at the moment, and so we're surrounded by beautiful trees all over us, all around us, and compared to the New York City jungle. And so just being able to go for a walk and kind of clear my mind. I'll often, use Siri to get my thoughts turned into words and then feed them into ChatGPT to organize them and challenge them back to me. And so that level of like dialogue that I have with a artificial intelligence is helps me just kind of reshape the way I'm going to think about my own perspective. So those
I
are.
I want to understand more about that.
Sure.
That's great. So how long is that process taking you?
That process in a day, or just like refining that process?
You're just constantly doing that?
Constantly.
So I can understand this. So you're talking into Siri?
Yep.
And it could be a monologue of like Siri 20 seconds, or sometimes like you go off on one for 7 minutes?
I think so. Probably for 30 minutes, I'll just have a conversation with ChatGPT.
Awesome.
Yeah.
But you're doing it through Siri and then plugging it in.
Typing, my thumbs are much slower than I'm from New York. I can talk fast, and luckily the microphone and the iPhone can process that into words faster than I can type. And so, if you talk to any one of my teammates, they'll know. So my first thing to do is pull out my phone and wake up ChatGPT and say, get your ass to work. But I'll put a prompt in where, hey, I'm running through this interesting marketing problem, or this, we're trying to bring this product to life. What's a strategy that could be interesting? Here are some initial thoughts. Help shape the way I should be thinking about this.
Yes.
And
nice.
it'll respond, and I'll read that
great.
respond, and I'll say, well, this doesn't make much sense to me, or this makes sense, push it further, or challenge me in the lens of a CMO, or is there some data out there that supports or counteracts this hypothesis? And so just that dialogue that I end up having is very helpful for me, and so critical thinking probably has refined over the last year for me.
That's fantastic. I'm gonna do that. I don't do it to that level. I need to do it to that level. Next question: is there? And you've already given a few brilliant ones. Is there a particular book that you'd like to recommend to the audience? It doesn't need to be your favorite, but something you've read recently that you think would be really valuable.
Oh man, there's so many good books out there, and it's always hard to pick one that sticks out. I think the obvious one, just for the people in Web3, is probably Read, Write, Own at the moment. And so, I think Chris does a great job of articulating, how networks exist today and where networks can potentially go in a much more open, permissionless environment.
It's a sensation, isn't it?
It is. But I would say a good book that has really stood, that stayed with me is Ben Horowitz's book of The Hard Thing About Hard Things.
Yeah.
And I've gotten to know him a little bit, and he likes hip hop a lot. I grew up in New York. I love hip hop, and so the fact that he was able to weave business concepts in, pull in lyrics from rap songs, and really help empower how to deal with these very difficult situations that you might be in was incredibly helpful for me as a as an entrepreneur, but also things that kind of just stay with you in life.
So the next question is, who would you recommend to come on the Searching for Mana show?
Ooh.
Feel free to just invite Ben if you could make that happen. Thanks. But no, sorry. Yeah.
I think Ben coming on the show would be phenomenal, and he's probably has some amazing stories compared to me. Who would I recommend to join this show? I think, it doesn't have to be Web3 specific, or it could be anyone. Damn, that's a good one. I mean, I would love to see someone like Larry Fink really come on this show.
Yes, it would be great.
Yeah.
I mean, he's really doing wonders for the space right now and behind it, but in an institutional grade way. Yeah, I'd love that. I'm pretty sure that we're reaching out to him daily.
Okay.
If you can make that happen.
Yeah. So he's one on kind of the financial institution side. Another person that I think is pushing the boundaries of what's possible in kind of the future of tech, AI, and Web3 is Rafiq Anadol. I don't know if you know him. He's done some cool stuff.
I have a screen that's being delivered here, and we're going to put one of the Rafiqs I own on it, which I don't know if that will be very distracting because it's so amazing. You
That's
just
going to be
stare
amazing.
at it the whole time. But I don't personally know him. My co-founder of Mana Labs does to a degree. She's very focused in NFT, digital art space. You like him?
I think he'd be a great person. I have one more. I'm cheating now. I think Alan Howard, who I just had lunch with from Brevin Howard, would be a great person too.
Yeah.
So Alan, and I've gotten to know him as well. He's kind of an amazing story, by the way, too. he's focused on not only disrupting the world of finance, but doing it with an amazing group of people across the world, and at the same time having a really cool NFT collection.
Yes, what he's doing. Let's do that. Let's just do that. Yeah, he's unbelievable what they're doing at the moment. Great recommendations. So the final question is really for us to find out what your mana is, Mo.
Well, when I think about the mana, I think of all the different pieces that have kind of really resonated with me in life. And going back to the point that you mentioned earlier, we should treat, of course you can seek truth, of course you can ask why millions of times, of course you should operate with empathy, but there's a sense of, you can get answers to all those things, but what do you do with it? You always have to be moving. You should be actionable. We can wax poetic. I can sit on this couch all day with you. I've got no problem with that. But how do we turn those words into action? And so when I go back to that, someone asked me the other day, what do I think of? What is currency? Is Bitcoin currency? Is dollar currency? Is pound currency? I think the most interesting concept today is the currency. All of these things have scarcity, and Web3 helps enable digital scarcity. But I think the most interesting thing to me is the scarcity of time. And so, taking all these things that we learn about, all these things that we want to do, but treating life very preciously and making sure that the scarcity of time leads to action. And that action has a lot of, uncertainty around it. We don't know what we'll achieve if we do something. In fact, the fear of what we may not achieve ends up leading us to inaction.
Yep.
And so I think just move, just do it, right? Nike obviously loves that one. But I think you just have to go out there and try, and keep trying, and keep trying. Yeah. And so that is a motto that I think that's been personal to me, and it's allowed me to be here and have this lovely conversation with you.
Yeah, well, look, I don't want to keep you any longer from getting out there and doing it. So I think you've described the horizon for all things that Aptos can become already. Thank you so much. Really, really inspiring. Very excited about what you've achieved and what you're clearly going to go on to do for hopefully our daughters to live in a better world.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Thank you for joining us on this episode. We hope you've enjoyed it. Please leave a like and a review and subscribe to our iTunes channel to stay up to date with the newest content. Find us on social media at Searching for Mana. Tell us who you want next on the show. Thanks again, and see you next time.